If you ask any producer what inspired them to make music, most of them might refer to a musician or a producer. Then you have others like myself that have been inspired by movies, man. For me, I just love how visual and sound just work together to evoke an emotion into the listener or the person that's watching the movie. So in today's video, I'm gonna be sampling two of my favorite Netflix original, and the first one is gonna be the movie Extraction 2. Man, that movie is just super intense, a lot of action, and I just like the main theme of that track. It just feels like you want revenge for something that's been taken away from you. And then next, one of my favorite shows, Narcos. Man, when you hear that theme song, man, not only is it just the vibe in itself because of the guitars, the Spanish guitars. I don't know about you, but it makes me feel like I'm a drug lord, man, or like a kingpin or something like that. So we're just gonna dive into this. This is gonna be a breakdown and just showing you my process of what I was thinking. So let's take a listen. Very space style. As you can see, I didn't play with this part because you could just take a look. It has more dynamics than this part. And I'm talking about more dynamics in the sense of frequency, because when you're playing something soft, it's not going to be covering over the whole spectrum, but the harder you play is going to add more frequency to that sound. So I just kind of strayed away from that. That was kind of my mindset for that. Since it's all spaced out, I didn't think of chopping it like it's a rhythm, you know? So the way I was thinking about it was in the sense of one shots. And if you're not familiar with one shot is pretty much just a sample that just plays the first note, and then you could just mess around with it and make your own melodies of it. So when you hear like certain parts like this, so like dun dun dun, that's a melody right there. I'm not even really paying attention to how the actual sample sounds, so I came up with something like this. And then I have some chops that went like this. So now let's talk about tempo. If you look at the sample edit mode, it's saying that it's at 58. But for me, I don't get caught up in time stretching and time warping and make it difficult. I really just try to play out a melody in my head, and then I tap out the tempos. Once I find like a tempo that I like, then I use that. And it's gonna match up because I already played along with it. So then when it comes to the mix, I didn't really do too much. I just panned it a little to the left. Then I add Air Flavor Pro. So let's take off these effects so I can show you how it sounds. And this is just a preset that I use, which is the SP1200. I didn't change anything. As you can see, it has a bit of distortion, digital, vinyl, and a little timbre of it. And you can just hear the difference. It's night and day. It just brought it out in a mix more, and then I just use a compressor because if you go back to sample edit, you can see there's very low parts and very high parts, and I just wanted to tame it. So without getting too complicated, I just used the preset light compression. And then I added the Air Flavor, but not the Air Flavor Pro, and it's a bit different. And I went with the preset bright and thin, but I turned down the timbre of the brightness because if I turn it up, here's how it sounds. And it just brought more of that range from the 8K to 12K range a bit more up. Since this has a lot of low end, what I should put on this is a kill EQ. Kill EQ is one of my favorite EQs when I want to take out the low end. And I like to use a preset no kick drum, so it sounds something like this. So that's pretty much all I did for my chops. And then I made an 808s to go along with it. And I like this 808. I wanted something that was heavy, have that distortion, and just have that grit to it. Let's talk about the drums real quick. And the pattern is pretty much simple. Let's just hear it. When it comes to drum bounces, you don't have to do too much. When you're in a genre, there's already a fundamental sound. And it's not just a fundamental sound of instruments, it's a fundamental sound of the rhythm as well. There's only so many places where you can put your kick until it no longer sounds like trap. You don't have to think too much. It's going to come down to your sound selection, and then it's just going to come down to different percussions. With percussions, you can play around with. And all I put on that was the MPC 60, give it that vintage effect. And then I just put a compressor just to tame the dynamics. So with all of that together, it would sound something like this. And then now let's talk about variations. How could we step outside of this and like just have different sequences or just different parts so that it doesn't get boring? So let's talk about this fourth track called Verse Chop. For this, the only difference is that if we hear the first one, it has like the bottom melody. Now, when you go to the verse chop, I just took those parts out and it sounds something like this. So right off the bat, now I got two parts that I could switch off from. And then I made another part, which I made a duplicate of the program. It's pretty much the same as the hook, but I add a different effect on it, which is the filter gate. This is why I've been like to using a lot, and it sounds something like this. Yeah, that's nasty, and that's just the default setting. So if I go to my mutes, when you hear that with the drums, it sounds something like this. And when it comes to like variations, you don't really need a lot, especially for trap. You gotta remember, if you're making like trap beats or any kind of rap beats, I've engineered a lot to understand now what artists are looking for when they come to record. They just want to record to a beat that just slaps, that has a bounce. They don't really want anything too extravagant that's just switching up a lot, because they're usually just going to the bounce of the rhythm. You know, they just want to spit their flow. So I can make a quick arrangement like this, have the hook chop display by itself. You know, just starting off that intro. And then add the drums. And then for the verse, I just take off the hook chop. I could just switch off with the hook chop effect. There's so much that you can do with the mutes and just a couple variations. I would say good to 3 to 5, you'll be good. Now let's move on to the next beat, which is Narcos. Now with this beat, this one was interesting. This did take me a while, but not a while like just sitting down trying to figure out something. It took me a while in the sense of getting some inspiration on how I could chop this up differently, because what I like to do is if I know somebody sampled something that I'm trying to sample, I like to hear how they sampled it first. So I went on YouTube and listened to a couple of the remix. All you have to do is type in like Narcos sample type beat, and usually they just sample the beginning part like this. You know, I didn't want it to be that obvious. A good way to stand out is just change the tuning. And I tuned it down a lot. I tuned it down to like -8. Now it sounds something like this. So you're probably thinking like, man, that's very slow. But I wanted it to be slow because the guitars were very fast. I could do a lot more with this now. So when I came up with my chops, it sounded something like this. So this second chop right here is actually the end of this sample. This is what it is. If you're looking for places where to chop your samples, the intro and the outro is always a great space to start. And for this one, I didn't go with the one-shot technique because I did like how the guitar sounds, so I just wanted to find a nice loop. And as far as the mix, I put a compression on it. And then I also used the vintage effect on this as well. So I actually used a bass in this, and I used it from the Jura, and I used the sub thumper. I wanted something to be subtle in the background, but still have that nice sub to it. And all I did was just put this in mono because at first it sounded like this. That's very wide, and I didn't want that, so I just turned down the width. Put it in mono, and then I use a limiter to turn it up because the sound was very low, so I just, you know, turned up the gain. And then I use the MPC 60. I'm telling you, the MPC 60, like, it just gives it that nice touch. When producers always trying to debate about the sonics, oh, like this MPC is better and all, I don't get caught up in that. I don't even care for the sonics. Well, my thing is, I don't understand why producers care so much about the sonic when there's so many plugins to make your own kind of sonic. So I just don't get into that whole debate. And then for the drums, like I say, keep it simple. And of course, these are the drums from the Unison kit. Once you find a kit that you like, you don't really need too much, especially when it comes to trap drums. And as you can see, I didn't put nothing on my drums. So now with the bass and the chops, it sounds something like this. Then I use the same technique from my extraction beat and duplicate the program and put that same filter gate on it, and it sounded something like this. And then when it comes to the arrangement, as you can see, I only have two. I could make an extra one, but we could start off like with the chop itself. So that's my breakdown of the Netflix original. Let me know which one is your favorite one, and also leave a comment of your favorite Netflix original. I like to hear what you guys like to watch as well. And if you like this kind of style of videos where I'm like sampling like movies or games, then you would like this one as well, where I sample 3 epic games and turn them into a banger. So make sure y'all check that one out as well. Peace.